What's going on, everybody? This is Brian Mazique, aka Unique Mazique. I am the hardest working man in sports and gaming, and this is I'm Just Sayin. And it is my pleasure on this first episode of this show to have Lorenzo Reyna. He is a heavy on Rams beat writer, and we are here to obviously talk some Bucs Rams as well as what's coming up next week for the Rams. What's going on today, Lorenzo?
I'm doing good. I like that name already, Unique Mazique.
Yeah. Well, I've had it for a little bit of time. I guess once I realized, or somebody told me I was unique. I don't even know if they meant it as a compliment or not, but
I would hope so.
That's what they said. They said,
it's a unique nickname.
So it kind of is what it is, man. So, but we had to talk about the Rams after Sunday's game, man. They look like the class, maybe not even just of the NFC, but the class of the league. You got to tell me your overall, I'm going to give you what I think, because actually I've got an opportunity to see the Rams up close this year as well. But I need to hear, what was that thing that you were most impressed about with what you saw from the Rams this week?
I would probably say just how efficient the offense looked, especially going against, I know Tampa Bay has struggled defensively this year, Brian, but it's still the Super Bowl champions. They still got guys like Vita Vea, Ndamukong Suh on the field, Levante David, Devin White, and they also still had Winfield back in the secondary as well for some of the snaps. But, on that aspect, so the way Matthew Stafford picked apart that defense, to me it spoke volumes, and it goes to show you that Stafford is in the situation that he's been searching for the longest time. He's never had this when he was with the Detroit Lions, let's be real. Another thing that also stood out was this. So I'm going to throw out this stat from yesterday. Mm-hmm. Tom Brady threw for 432 yards. Typical GOAT day for Brady. However, it took him until the fourth quarter to finally throw a touchdown pass. That's when you know the Rams had a legit lights-out game plan on defense. So that aspect also surprised me immensely from yesterday's game.
Definitely, man. Well, one thing I'm going to tell you, this is just from my observation with the Rams. One of the biggest things that I see is that from a defensive standpoint, I always look for whether or not a strong defense has playmakers on all three levels of their defense. Mm-hmm. And obviously we know about the monster up front in Aaron Donald. But then you also have a shutdown corner in Jalen Ramsey. They're getting, I think, much better play from the linebackers this year than they've gotten in the past 2 to 3 years. And I'm going to give you the person who I think is going to be one of the unsung heroes for the Rams this year. Sony Michel now he didn't have a humongous day statistically yesterday, but Sony Michel has the ability to be one of the most important pieces to that offense this year, because you need stability at that running back position. You need somebody who can play all three downs so that you don't have to take them out on passing downs because they're able to pass pro effectively. That was somewhat of a prerequisite for being an every down back there with New England. So we know Belichick asked that of his running backs quite a bit. Sony Michel was able to do that. Over 1,000-yard rusher 2 years ago, I believe it was. And it helped the Patriots win their last Super Bowl. I'm telling you, I know that a lot of the other names are going to get some love throughout the season. Matthew Stafford, like you said, had a great game yesterday, 4 touchdowns. What really also stung out, he was only sacked one time and he was only hit 4 times throughout the entire game. So let's not undersell what this offensive line did against a nasty defensive front. So I am super high on the Rams at this point. I saw them unfortunately destroy the Bears in week 1, just dismantled Chicago. I'm telling you, this Rams team looks nasty, but keep an eye out. Even once their running back situation starts to get a little bit healthier, keep an eye out on Sony Michel's contributions as he gets more acclimated with the offense, better understands what they ask of him on pass protection situations. He is in a situation too where this is like contract time for him. Prove it. He has to prove that he's worthy of another deal. He's been You know, he's had some injury history throughout his career, even dating back to high school. He is going to be that unsung hero for the Rams. He could be a very big key. So I want to look ahead to next week for the Rams. Rams have another big game right behind this one. Like, this is prove your mettle time for the Rams. So you just come off a game with the Bucs, and now you're going to take on the undefeated Arizona Cardinals. So in your estimation, aside from Kyler Murray and aside from DeAndre Hopkins, whom we already know if Hopkins is healthy, what kind of weapon he can be. But aside from those two guys, who do you see as the person on the Arizona Cardinals roster that could potentially be the biggest issue for the Rams in week 4?
I know he's up in his years, Brian, but I'm going to be energized to see how J.J. Watt matches up with Andrew Whitworth. I mean, that's veteran on veteran battle right there. Yeah. And I mean, that's one guy, that's one matchup I can think of. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins has had his fair share of battles with Jalen Ramsey. And I mean, there's been instances where D-Hop has actually gotten the better end of Ramsey. So I'll see I'll see how Ramsey raises his level of play or what he brings to the table against a guy like DeAndre Hopkins. But, you know, I'm also going to be very, very curious to see what game plan Raheem Morris draws up against Kyler Murray. I know Raheem has implemented plans against mobile quarterbacks before, but Kyler, to me, Brian, presents a whole much different challenge because, I mean, he looks faster away from film. He looks faster on TV. And I mean, obviously with Brady, you can easily game plan because he's not going to run. He's not going to run around so much. So now I have to see like what things Raheem is going to throw at Kyler. I'm going to also throw in this other matchup. You mentioned Sony Michel. He's going against Budda Baker. I mean, Buddha's one of the more versatile safeties in this league, and certainly like one of the more complete safeties in the NFC West. I'm going to be curious to see how Arizona plays on Sony Michel and how Arizona moves around Budda Baker in this contest.
Yeah, I can understand that. J.J. Watt and Andrew Whitworth. I don't know if a J.J. Watt still has game plan wrecking ability at this point in his career. As of right now, it looks a lot like to me that the Cardinals are getting this done with a high-powered offense, so many weapons, man. Christian Kirk, Rondale Moore, Edmonds at the running back position, who has really been, I think, a huge surprise. That's been a major thing for me, just seeing the weapons just come alive for the Cardinals. But I'm going to tell somebody right now, a dude who I think is on the verge of he's already had some really good days. I just mentioned them. But for the Cardinals, Rondale Moore. Rondale Moore was already one of the most athletic players coming out of this draft. The only issues with him is that there's a little bit of a size issue, and he had some injury history in college. So I think that made him maybe slip a little bit more than he would have had those issues not been the case. But from a pure playmaking standpoint, this guy is a field stretching, playmaking, run after the catch kind of guy. And I'm going to tell you, if the Rams are focused too much on stopping DeAndre Hopkins and they allow this guy to get loose behind the safeties, behind the secondary, with the way that Kyler can extend the play, he can wind up being perhaps one of the biggest impact players in that game. So I'm going to tell you, if the Rams and their fans are looking to beware of a weapon that the Cardinals have beyond the usual suspects, it is absolutely Rondale Moore. And I'm even talking to some fantasy people with this. Rondale Moore is a legit option. I'm telling you, he's had some good games already this year. He's a legit option for somebody to consider.
And Brian, I'm glad you mentioned Rondale Moore. And, you know, we got to shout out our guys, Ryan and Jared, who do a commendable, tremendous job of covering the Cardinals.
Absolutely.
I mean, I've read about Rondale Moore through them. I'm glad you mentioned it because, like, obviously we know about what DeAndre Hopkins brings to the table. But what does Raheem Morris have in store to counter Rondale Moore? I mean, your options right now are you can either plug David Long, and David Long, mind you, he's been very hot and cold as the slot corner for the Rams. But the other option is you can throw in the rookie you drafted in the third round, Robert Rochelle. I mean, Rochelle size-wise could probably match up with Rondale Moore, but it's still a challenge on Rochelle's end, a challenge on David Long's end. You know, one of the things that I caught from the Rams against the Buccaneers is like they actually did what they could to limit the explosive plays. This Arizona offense, though, I mean, I'm not saying they're as explosive as the Bucs, but let's be realistic. When they get the ball to Moore, when they get the ball to the other weapons, it's like, you know, it's pick your poison. Good luck defending one of those guys. And again, I'm glad you mentioned Rondale Moore. He's the guy that you definitely have to take seriously if you're the Rams, and it's going to come down to either David Long or the rookie Robert Rochelle.
Yeah, I would agree, man. I can see Raheem Morris having a tough time scheming up for so many weapons. I think he's going to have the same conundrum that everybody had, but every defensive coordinator has trying to deal with the Cardinals this year. Okay, so now obviously one of the biggest games. I want to go out on the limb and say that Bucs-Patriots in Week 4 is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, regular season game in NFL history. I'll hesitate and say it's the biggest game because we're not talking about two great teams at this point. We got one's 2-1, one's 1-2. This game would have been even bigger if the Patriots were 3-0 and the Bucs were 3-0. If that was the case, oh my God, they probably would have people shifting time frames around, right? But as it is, it's still a huge game. And so your Rams just took care of the Bucs, right? Looking ahead, if you're talking to Patriots fans, right, which obviously you will be when they see this video, but if you're talking to Patriots fans, what is the thing that you're telling them? Hey, you guys, I know you're focused on your team, but what is it that they need to know about this Bucs team besides Tom Brady and Gronk, who they obviously know very well?
Well, you got to account for Chris Godwin. Godwin actually has some of his biggest plays against the Rams. And so he's one to consider. I also don't know what the status update is with Rob Gronkowski. I know he left the game momentarily against the Rams, but
rib injury, yeah.
Yeah, but you know, if he does play, I mean, I would imagine that in the case of Gronk, he's gonna have a whole wide range of emotions because obviously he was immensely popular and a legend there in Foxborough. But you know, I'm energized for this game. I'm thinking like if you're the Patriots, Chris Godwin is a guy to definitely key up on. But I also will say the running attack somehow, Brian, the running attack went missing for the Buccaneers, and so I mean. You know, one of the other big things that I noticed too is like when the Bucs would place a running back to try to do a blitz pickup, Ram guys were running right by them. So, I mean, maybe the hoodie has a blueprint there. Maybe the hoodie can attack those running backs and get to the guy he coached for 2 decades.
Yeah, you know, one thing I noticed also as well, I think was a big factor and maybe didn't get discussed enough is the fact that, you know, the Bucs played this game without Antonio Brown. And that, I mean, I know it's easily to forget, you know, about Brown's effectiveness because of the issues and things that he's had and off the field and that sort of thing. But this guy is still a legit nightmare to cover, especially out of the slot. And if you consider the other weapons that they have, you know, you wonder, I'm not trying to say that he would have been the difference and they beat the Rams instead, but you wonder how that would have affected the game. Now, looking ahead to the Patriots, in Week 4, if Brown is back, I don't know what the status will be. I'm sure we'll be getting updates by the middle of this week to kind of figure out whether or not he'll be effective while he goes through the protocol of COVID-19. But if he's available for that game, now we got a whole other thing, because I don't know if you saw this. I did a story on this, but the most hated NFL player in the New England region right now is Antonio Brown. They did a study, BetOnline, and it blew my mind, Lorenzo. I'm like, why are the Patriots fans hating on a dude who literally is totally irrelevant to them? But yeah, I guess it could be because, you know, he was voted the absolute worst free agent signing in Patriots history, well, over the last 20 years in Patriots history. Maybe that was the case. He was only on the team for 2 weeks, man. Yeah. So I don't know, but I'm interested in seeing what sort of impact he can have against the Patriots. But I mean, man, I've been covering the Patriots for the past 2 years, inside and out. And I'm going to tell you, I know a lot of Patriots fans don't want to say this, but I am very concerned about what's going to happen in week 4. The Patriots offensive line isn't playing well.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, the receivers are still finding issues creating separation. It is, it's there's a lot of issues to be going in playing the Bucs in this situation on this platform. It's a lot going on. I mean, you just saw the Bucs. If I asked you to give me a predicted final score of this game, what would you say?
I think all signs are indicating that this is not only going to be a Bucs win, but I have a feeling, Brian, it's going to be one-sided. I mean, you mentioned Antonio Brown coming back from reserve COVID-19 list. I also wouldn't rule out JPP, Jason Pierre-Paul. I mean, he had to sit out because he had a lingering shoulder injury. Ugh. And, I mean, as you know, JPP and the Patriots, they have a bad history with each other. But, I mean, the defense is still stacking. I think another thing, too, the Bucs, to put it bluntly, Brian, they're going to be pissed off. And it's going to start with Tom Brady because of the fact that not so much the fact they lost to the Rams, but how they lost to the Rams. And it's like the perfect storm for Brady, Gronkowski, even AB, because they're going to a place that they know so well in front of a nationally televised audience on Sunday night.
Yeah, I honestly, man, I really couldn't agree more. I kind of see it happening very similar myself. It's not going to be fun to be in New England after week 4 if you're 1-3 and you just got blasted by Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's going to be. I wonder if
Logan Mankins still has anything left. He could come in handy. I know he's a god. He's a god in Fresno. I don't know if I've ever shared that, but
at this point, they might need Logan Paul to play offensive tackle. Somebody
put on the gloves.
Anybody, man.
Get his brother out there too.
Anybody, man. Well, Lorenzo, man, I appreciate your time, man. Hopefully we can do this again. Thanks so much. I appreciate you. All right, it is my pleasure now to have an opportunity to speak to heavy NBA editor Sean Deveney. He's been in the business for a minute. How you doing today, Sean?
Pretty good, Brian. How are you?
I am fantastic, man. So today or this week, we saw NBA Media Day across the entire league. So it's feeding the thirst for hoops. So you talk a little bit about some of that stuff that you saw like this week, some of the things that you think are going to be interesting to follow throughout this year.
Yeah, probably not the way that the NBA office would have liked to have seen Media Day go, especially they've got this big 75th anniversary thing. They really want the focus to be on that. And, they're going to unveil the 75th anniversary team and all that. But there's a lot of talk about COVID. About vaccines. That's not what Adam Silver wanted players media to be talking about today, this week. There's a lot of talk about Ben Simmons and what happens with that situation. Again, not the league's favorite topic. I think it wasn't exactly, if you're the NBA, it wasn't exactly what you were looking for on this day.
Yeah, definitely, man. And, from the Bulls beat perspective, this is a day that people have been super looking forward to, because in Chicago, and I won't say outside of Chicago, but definitely in Chicago, there's as much optimism, I would say, as there has been since Derrick Rose was here. So I know you got an opportunity to speak to Zach LaVine, and throughout everybody that he's been talking to, he's been saying, hey, I totally plan on being here. I want to be there. But if you had to put a percentage on it and said this blank percentage, Zach LaVine will be a part of the Bulls roster in the for 2022-23 season. So after this coming season, after he's a free agent, what would that percentage be?
I would have to say it's about 90%. I mean, I really have a hard time imagining Zach with everything that's happened. You go back to when he first got traded to Chicago. The team that he was traded to, they're all gone. Denzel Valentine and Lauri Markkanen were the last two remaining guys from that team that Zach got traded to. So you've seen 3 head coaches, a change in the front office, and basically a full roster turnover. He has said all along he wants to be here. He wants to be the guy that they build around. He wants to break his own personal drought as far as the playoffs go. In Chicago, he wants to be a guy who leads the way with that. And he's in position to do that, no question, with this team. I'd be really surprised if, after all that he's gone through, still a young guy, but been through a lot in his career, I'd be really shocked if he turned around and hit the free agent market. And the other thing to consider, Brian, too, is who's going to sign him. There's not going to be a ton of free agent cap space out there next year. So I'd really be surprised if you saw Zach playing anywhere but Chicago next season.
Yeah, and as someone who followed the Bulls for decades at this point, and I'm a fan of Zach LaVine. I love him. I love his game. I love his drive. But I am going to play a little bit of devil's advocate here, right? So this year during his Team USA run, Zach said something, and I thought it was so crazy because no one else was probably have been thinking about this, but he brought something to light that I think you really have to consider. He said, this is the first time that I won 4 games in a row since college, right? So when you hear that, right, and you roll around and, I'm setting a scenario that may or may not happen. Roll around to the All-Star break. What if the Bulls are right around 500, 2 or 3 games under 500? Zach still hasn't signed an extension, which I don't blame him. I wouldn't if I were him. He still hasn't signed an extension. He's in this situation now, and the Bulls are now in a situation because the Bulls have spent a ton of money to put around Zach LaVine. Zach LaVine is, by most standards, and either approaching an elite player or already an elite player. But at this point, the ingredients that you've put in this pot are still not leading to contention. And when you look at how much money the Bulls have spent, you would say to yourself, this should be a team that should be a top 5, top 4 in the East team. If that's not the case, do you look at a guy who, as the best player on teams over the last 2 to 3 years, still hasn't been able to even win 4 games in a row? And now you got Lonzo Ball, DeMar DeRozan, Nikola Vucevic, and, hopefully an improving and healthy Patrick Williams, a decent bench. And we're still at this point. At that point, would you listen to trade talk or trade offers for Zach LaVine?
I don't think Zach is quite on the level to where you don't listen to trade offers. Like, I think you're going to answer the phone and you're going to see what's out there. I don't think they're going to get the kind of deal that would warrant them pulling the trigger on anything. I just don't see that happening. I think this front office, when you look at the moves they've made a bet on Zach LaVine. I mean, part of what they're doing is building a team around Zach LaVine. I don't think that because think about what you're talking about here. We're talking about 4 months. I don't think from mid-October to mid-February, you've got enough time, not even 4 months really, you've got enough time there to make that decision and decide that you're going to, blow up the decisions that you've made leading up to now. Getting Vucevic, getting Lonzo, obviously, and certainly getting DeMar was all designed to push this team with Zach as the leader, as the face of the franchise into the playoffs. And I just can't see turning around after just a few months and completely shattering that plan. So I just don't think that's going to happen. I certainly look, if they're hovering around 500 again, if they finish with 42 wins, there'll be a lot of frustration. But I think that they're going to stay the course. I think that I just don't see this franchise, this front office, veering off of what they've tried to build so far with what they've got.
Yeah. The Bulls, the young Bulls fan in me that I'm telling my age here a little bit. I remember when we used to go outside and emulate Reggie Theus. So certainly are hoping that's what the case is. But yeah, it is. It's going to be an interesting.
Did you have the hair too, Brian?
I've been follically challenged most of my life, so It just is what it is, But I'm going to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to move east to the Knicks. I'm going to ask flat out: can the Knicks be a true contender if Julius Randle was their best player?
No, I don't think so. I think they got lucky last year that he had the kind of year that he did. I think the reversion to what we saw in the playoffs was probably a little more pronounced than I would have expected. But I think that's what you had to be afraid of the whole time, was that having Julius Randle as your lead player. There's a ceiling on how far you're going to go. The question is, what are they going to get out of Kemba? Can Kemba be enough, stay healthy enough, for one thing? That's always been the question these last two years for him. Can he stay healthy enough with that knee issue that seems to just be sort of grinding him down and just kind of gets worse and worse without being so significant that it requires a year off and a rehab? You'd almost rather that, at some point, rather than this nagging thing that always seems to pull him down. But yeah, I mean, if Kemba can be, all-star Kemba, the guy that we've seen flashes of, then that takes a lot off of Julius, and he can be a number 2, number 3 player. And then of course you're going to need RJ Barrett to really step up and be that number 2. So no, they can't do it with Julius Randle as the number 1 player. The fortunate thing is they may have some other options there depending on Kemba's health and RJ Barrett's development. If those two things happen and Julius can kind of be bumped down on the totem pole down to number 3, then I think you have to like the Knicks' chances to at least make the playoffs again.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, I don't feel like missing the playoffs is ever really a serious threat when Tibbs is your coach. Tibbs has been one of the best regular season coaches in the NBA, I would say, over the past 15 to 20 years. If you just look at kind of what he got done with mangled Bulls lineups. I mean, the Bulls literally
Minnesota.
Minnesota as well. Yeah, I mean, the Bulls had the best record in the NBA, and Derrick Rose missed almost half the season the year after he won MVP. So Tibbs gets it done in the regular season. The postseason is where he's still unproven as a head coach. And I'm going to tell you, you mentioned the name RJ Barrett. To me, if I am a Knicks fan, he scares the life out of me because he just has a feel about him as an athlete that represents frailty. It represents I don't know what I'm going to get out of this kid. I look at him and I know that you want to be great. I know that you care, but I look at you and I'm like, something about you makes me think that at the end of games or in second halves, we don't know what we're going to get too often. And I'm going to tell you, how often will you hear somebody look at Anthony Edwards and think about something that he said as looking at it from some sort of, he spoke from a position of wisdom. But last year, Anthony Edwards said RJ Barrett was about to take a last-second shot against him. And Edwards literally said, oh, yeah, that's who we wanted to have the ball. That's who we wanted to take the shot. And it's because other people see this frailty that he carries. And I'm telling you, this guy is holding too high of a position from a offensive pecking order standpoint for that team to win consistently in the postseason. Somebody else that you mentioned or someone else is going to have to step up, because if RJ Barrett's your number 2, you're in trouble.
Brian, he's 21. Let's
I get it. I get it. I get it.
17 points last year.
I get it.
He shot. If you look at the way he shot the ball last year, that was the most encouraging part.
Yes, he improved.
He got better as a playmaker. He got better at a lot of the little things that you want to see him get better at. But to me, the shooting, especially the second half of the year, where he pushed himself up over 40% for the year after sort of a so-so beginning. You look at the last couple months, he was just red hot from the outside. So that's what you want to see. You want to see that he's got that he can carry that in. I'm with you on the fact that, crunch time, is he the guy that I want shooting the ball? I don't know. He hasn't shown that to this point. But again, he's 21. I'm not ready to give up on him in that respect just yet. And also that's where, having Kemba there is going to take a lot of pressure off of him. Even Evan Fournier, I think can if you have Kemba drive and kick to Evan Fournier, I'm fine with that as well in the closing minutes. But yeah, look, RJ Barrett's development is going to be huge. He's got to be a better player than Julius Randle if they're ever going to be, a top 4 team in the East. If they're ever going to be a home court advantage team in the East, it's going to require that RJ Barrett at least be their second best player, if not their best player. And we don't know if he's got that in him. 21 years old. I'm not ready to give up on that yet, though.
Definitely not ready. It just seems that there's an intangible aspect of you that is not necessarily related to age, and that's the part of it that I'm a little bit worried on.
Yeah.
But
no, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm gonna get your opinion on one other situation, one other team before I let you go. If I asked you to give me one word to describe the roster that the Lakers have created, what would that word be?
Oh man, it would have to be probably Hall of Fame, because I don't know that I can recall seeing this many Hall of Famers. Now that doesn't mean it's going to work. Everybody, all the asterisks and caveats, but I mean, this much of a resume on one team, I don't. I covered that 2004 Lakers team that had Gary Payton and Karl Malone when they joined with Shaq and Kobe, and that obviously was a great team but this, you're talking about Rondo coming in, and he might not even play that much of a role. Carmelo, of course, and you have obviously Anthony Davis and LeBron. I mean, you've just got wow, Dwight Howard will be a Hall of Famer. I mean, you've got 5 Hall of Famers right there in your lineup, and they're not all going to start. They're not all going to play that much. So, it's to me, we can pick apart, what the fit is going to be and whether Westbrook's going to do. You can pick all that apart, but you got to at some point step back and just kind of be in awe of the fact that look at the Hall of Famers that these guys have. I mean, this is pretty impressive. I mean,
it really is. I would say, man, it's to have it from a pure accolade standpoint is probably the greatest assembly of talent or of accolades and awards that we've ever seen in NBA history on one team. I'd have to really do some deep research to find out whether or not we've had more guys on a team with a collection of championships, MVPs, rookie of the years, all of it, just everything, rebounding titles,
Olympic gold medal. I bet you won't
Olympic gold medals.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean it's. I mean, how many guys who were past, Team USA members are on this team? Like how many times have we seen that before? So, but when I asked you for the one word, I thought you were going to channel some M. Night Shyamalan and say old.
I was trying to avoid the easy one, Brian. That was the softball answer, and like I said, they are old, and that could be a problem. There's no question. But I just think if that's where your focus is, I think you're missing the forest for the trees, and that is look at what these guys have. Yeah. It's pretty impressive.
It is. I would agree. Well, Sean, I really appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much. Hopefully, we get a chance to do this again, and this was fun.
Absolutely. I'll talk to you soon, Brian.
All right. Have a good one. It's my pleasure to have an opportunity to speak to Brandon Kravitz from 96.9 The Game in Orlando, talking a bunch of things, Florida sports and more. What's going on today, Brandon?
Man, it's nice to meet you face to face. This has been a long time coming. You and I have had many conversations over the year before. Yes. Always electric, and you always brought the knowledge and all things in gaming and all of that great stuff. So then anything I can do to add to the content world, let's do it.
Yes. And I've been trying to find out if you can do some sort of voice transformation, because I want to see if I can get your voice and put it in here and just do a couple little tweaks. I want to hood it out a little bit, but I want to have a little
I can't pull that off.
Yeah, I want to have a little bit of Brandon Kravitz, kind of that you got this. I don't know. It's like a Matt Vasgersian meets
oh wow
Keith Jackson and somebody else.
That's the nicest thing anybody's ever said to me. Matt Vasgersian. I'm going to take that with. I'm going to sleep easy tonight knowing that.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta call it how you see it. So I gotta talk to you, man. Tampa Bay. So it's a lot to talk about from Tampa Bay. It always is, but they got it handed to them on Sunday against the Rams. So can you tell me a little bit about what, if anything, surprised you about the Bucs' performance in that game?
I was surprised that they let the Rams kind of jump on them right out of the gate. I thought that this was going to be Tampa kind of setting the tone. This is a Rams team that's still trying to kind of sort itself out, new quarterback, and Matt Stafford's played well, but they went on the road the week before, and they struggled to beat an Indianapolis team that we're seeing is just not very good. Mm-hmm. So for them to come out and really establish this level of dominance early on, for me personally, I see great things with this LA Rams team. I think the thing that surprised me is how quickly they've figured it out on offense, and to do that against a Bucs front seven that is as good as it gets in the NFL. I think that was what surprised me. Clearly, the injuries in the secondary played a clear. That was a big part in what we saw and the gaps that the Bucs had defensively. They could not stop Cooper Kupp in that game, and it cost them. The fact that they couldn't run the football, but that's something that when you say what's surprising, that's not the Bucs just can't really run the football when Tom Brady's your leading rusher. You know you've got issues there. This is not a perfect team, but I was surprised that they didn't jump out to a bigger lead to start.
Yeah, I thought that there was a focus from a game planning standpoint on containing Robert Woods, and it almost appeared as though the Bucs defense prioritized Robert Woods in coverage over Cooper Kupp, which was blowing my mind because Cooper Kupp is lighting the league up this year. Yeah. Like there's hardly anybody in the league from a receiver standpoint is putting up better numbers than him. And Robert Woods, I'm telling you, he was he was being, umbrellaed by a safety, and you would have thought he was the one having Cooper Kupp kind of and Robert Woods has had some decent games early on, but I was a little bit surprised by that focus.
And who knows? I mean, there could be some gamesmanship in this. It's still week 3 of the NFL. I said this going in, that no matter what happened, positively, negatively, in the favor of the Bucs, in the favor of the Rams, I was not going to walk away from this game and overreact and say that now we know what these teams are. They said it on the broadcast 1,000 times. You heard it in the pregame, and it's true. This is likely a preview of what we're going to see possibly in the NFC Championship game. I don't think these teams want to show all their cards. Now, Tom Brady's sitting there, and he doesn't want to hear any of that. It's not like you could sell him that on the sidelines, but there is a little bit of let's not show everything that we have against an opponent that we're probably going to meet again when it means way more than it means now in week 3. This was one of the concerns I had with the Bucs coming in this year. This is a team we saw this with, I remember the Lakers many years ago when it was Shaq and Kobe. It was like, roll the ball out there. Let's get to the playoffs. We see a lot of great teams do that in the NBA. Yeah. I'm not saying that that's where the Bucs' minds are at because they have one of the greatest leaders we've ever seen in football in Tom Brady. But there has to be a little bit of complacency of we know that we can use the regular season to sort things out. And then when we get to the playoffs, it's a different ball game. That plus health. I can't explain the Robert Woods thing because I see the same thing you do with Cooper Kupp. Yeah. I don't know that there are 3 wide receivers in the NFL that are tougher to cover in the league than him right now,
especially in the slot. I mean, do you think that Tampa, for whatever reason, obviously with Brady more in their mind, you think they overlooked the Rams looking ahead to week 4 to this really super high profile matchup against the Patriots? Like, obviously the Patriots are not as good of a team as the Rams, and the Rams stand to be more of an impediment to the Buccaneers repeating than the Patriots. But did they get caught up a little bit in the hype that people like you and I create about this Patriots game?
I don't know how they could, because there was plenty of hype going into this one too. So it's like, pick your hype, pick your poison. And for Brady, I mean, one of the big bits of hype that goes into this is that he could break the yardage record, all-time yards record for a quarterback. He almost did that in LA. He was only 70 yards away from it. Now it's a guarantee. We already knew that was likely going to happen, but now you can just lock it up. That might be done by quarter one. He'll have that one all secured. I mean, the fact that clearly wasn't a focus of theirs, and the Rams give you plenty to worry about between Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald. I would be shocked if that was a factor at all in their performance not being up to par for what they've been able to accomplish. 10 straight wins. I mean, at some point they were going to drop one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think it's any reason to panic for sure, because we've only had one team ever run the table and win the Super Bowl. So one loss doesn't do anything major. I mean, but obviously we live in this world where you get 6 days to react in between games. So it's prone for overreaction anytime you have that situation. So looking ahead to this Patriots game, the Patriots, the Bucs play without Antonio Brown, which I think it could be a bigger factor than people are realizing. It's an additional weapon off the field. Gronk got hurt in the middle of this game. And obviously the Bucs didn't lose this game necessarily because of offensive side from the running game. And obviously Gronk can be a factor in the run game. But what do you expect if Antonio Brown is cleared from the COVID-19 protocols? The Patriots are not in a great situation right now themselves at 1-2, just got bombed out by the Saints and a pass rush they couldn't slow down. What are you seeing looking ahead to week 4?
I don't know how the Patriots stay in this game, and it's only a 6-point line. So Vegas is giving a lot of respect to Bill Belichick. If anybody's looking ahead, not that he's prone to do that either, but I think if anybody was looking ahead to a big matchup, it would have been the other side of this.
Yeah.
This is Bill Belichick's legacy in some ways. If Tom Brady comes in there and stomps all over the field that he owned for 20 years and does it with Bill Belichick snarling on the other sideline, that's an image we won't be able to get out of our heads as sports fans for a long, long time. So Belichick's got something cooked up. He's not just going to let Brady do this with ease. I just don't know how the Patriots keep up. I mean, Bill Belichick can be the brightest mind in the building, but at the end of the day, you got to have the horses that run the race. And the Patriots just don't have a lot of talent. They're decent defensively, but they don't scare you at all on offense. And now James White looks like he's going to be missing time with a hip injury. So it's just another guy down. They signed John U. Smith in free agency to a ton of money. He looked terrible on Sunday against the Saints. And who else? I mean, what? And that's the thing. The NFL, it's a matchup game. So the Bucs have a banged up secondary. Well, that's perfect because you don't need a good secondary to stop the Patriots. They'll be able to handle that with the dominant defensive line. The Bucs, what do the Bucs do best on defense? They stop the run. What do the Patriots love to do more than anything else now that they don't have Tom Brady? They love to run the football. Yeah. And it's just a bad matchup. I don't see how New England hangs in this one. Antonio Brown coming back, I think in the future is a big deal. I don't know if it's a big deal for this game because of everything I've spelled out. I just don't think the Patriots offer that much to worry about. But we saw it on Sunday against the Rams. When you don't have the full allotment of weapons, all of a sudden, that glaring weakness of no possible run game, they just have no semblance of it. It becomes more apparent because now you've got Gronk went down for an injury very briefly, but it's Evans, it's Godwin, and it's an older tight end. All of a sudden, that offense looks a little bit more human when you don't add the Antonio Brown component, a Pro Bowler playing in the slot or out wide and allowing Godwin to slide into the slot. It creates a problem that I don't think existed for the Rams to deal with on Sunday, and it showed some of the weakness and vulnerability that the Bucs do indeed have.
Yeah, and you're right. I don't think that the Patriots, as of right now, especially with this dink and dunk sort of scheme that they're running, especially with they're overprotective. I don't know if you saw I did a write-up on this from Sunday. Belichick wouldn't even allow Mac Jones to speak to the Saints after the game. He literally, Jameis Winston came over to Mac Jones and did the traditional quarterback kind of a conversation after the game. Mac Jones was literally sitting on the bench sulking about, he had just thrown an interception. It was his third of the game. He was about to go and talk to some other Saints players. Belichick literally grabs him by the wrist and leads him off the field. And to me, that image was a microcosm of the way that they're handling Mac Jones. And we're talking about him not going down the field and not stretching defenses and all of this sort of thing. Now you're going in here against a Bucs defense. The strength of their defense is the front seven, and you're literally playing the game within a 15 to 20 yard window. Yeah,
no, it's dangerous. I did not see that. I need to look at that because that's one of those little things you can pick up a lot from little moments. Little moments, man. So final score, if you had to predict right now, obviously, I know you haven't seen injury reports and that sort of thing, but if you had to predict the final score of that Bucs-Patriots game, what do you see? 28-17 Tampa Bay.
You're giving them 17 points. I'm shocked that you're even giving them 17.
They're at home. They're probably going to start hot. I wouldn't be surprised if it was 7-10-0 out of the gate. New England looks really good, and everybody starts to go, oh, man, Belichick's figured it out. You know, the home team typically has a way about scoring first and getting ahead of that momentum that they have and their fans create. The fans are going to be jacked up for this.
Oh, yeah.
And you script those first couple series of the game more than you do as the game goes along. It's more about adjustments. The adjustments are going to favor the other side. Not that Belichick's not smart, but just just having the talent on the field to being able to actually adjust to what Belichick's throwing out there. That's kind of the way I see this one playing out. I hope that over analysis over the week, you know how this stuff goes, doesn't sway my opinion too much. I end up starting to, I get psyched out by the Vegas odds makers. Like, what do they see where they actually have the Patriots as only 6-point underdogs in this game? I've got them losing by 11 and coming up with a score in my mind. That sounds right to me. And for now, and maybe leading up to till kickoff, that's what I'll stick with.
Yeah, I'm thinking honestly, man. I'm thinking 34-10 Bucs.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm telling you. I cover the Patriots every day, and I've done it for the last 2 years. And I'm telling you, I just don't see a way for them to keep up. From they're not going to be able to control this game on the ground. This Vita Vea, this front seven, this is a nasty group of dudes, man. And you're not going to just pound the ball straight down their throats and think that you're going to set up play action opportunities. You don't have a mobile quarterback who's able to make you play 11 on 11. You don't have any of that stuff going for it. So you got to out scheme them with inferior talent. And I just don't see it. So we'll see. I'm sure Patriots Nation is hoping that I'm dead wrong, but that's what I see, So
isn't there a portion of Patriots Nation that leans the side of Tom Brady anyway? Because he's like their deity.
Yeah, honestly, it's very similar, right? So I grew up in Chicago, and it's very similar to the Michael Jordan effect, right? When there were a bunch of people who swore that they were Bulls fans, but they literally realized that once Mike retired, they were really only Michael Jordan fans.
Yeah,
because the thing of it was it was very difficult for them to continue to follow the team without this great superstar leading the way. And those people found out, I really don't love the Bulls. I just love this ballhead guy who kept leading us to championships.
Right.
So it's, and I think that a lot of Patriots Nation is going through a bit of that realization that you weren't ever a Pats fan. You were a Tom Brady fan.
Which is interesting for that city because they've got great sports fans.
Yeah.
They've got loyal sports fans, and they've stuck out with the Red Sox through thin and thin, through thick and thin. The Bruins have a great following. The Celtics, it doesn't matter how good or bad these teams are through history in my life. They've always had great support. But the Patriots were at the bottom of that list until Tom Brady took off. And so, it's I think there are a lot of Patriots fans that didn't realize that the Patriots were easily, and you could tell me if I'm wrong, but just from the outside looking in, when I was growing up, the Patriots were at the bottom of the list for what Boston sports fans cared about. I mean,
you're talking about Steve Grogan, Tony Eason, and all those. Yeah, absolutely at the bottom of the list.
And it might free fall back down to that. That'll be interesting to see. Let's not forget about the Gronk factor too. Tom Brady's going to be motivated, but don't be surprised if Gronk pops a couple in the end zone on Sunday as well.
Oh, I wouldn't be shocked at all. I mean, it might even be expected at this point, even though the Patriot linebackers are pretty solid. So they will more than likely, honestly, I think if Adrian Phillips plays, he gets the assignment of Gronk, and he's been taking on larger guys, the last 2 seasons. So I don't know. I think they may have a fairly decent answer with Gronk. He's a fantastic player, so you're not going to hold him, but it'll be interesting. That part will be interesting. But I just think that I think where the Patriots lose is on the outside, and it's just trying to contain Brady and the weapons that they have to throw outside. So I think that'll be where it is. But
I look forward to the chess match. It's going to be great.
It might actually be checkers.
Nobody knows Brady better than Belichick, and seeing that play out on Sunday Night Football standalone game, it's going to be great.
Oh, it is. It's going to be fantastic. But I want to switch to the hardwood. I know you cover the Orlando Magic extensively, and I know you were at Media Day this week. So I want to talk about the Bulls' connection with the Magic. So there was a humongous trade. Arguably maybe the biggest trade that took place in the middle of the season last year. Nikola Vucevic, multi-time All-Star, leaving Orlando, a place that he loved. He was so ingrained in the community there, just beloved there, and just an awesome guy from what I can gather. Coming to Chicago in exchange for Wendell Carter Jr. Obviously, you guys had to take Otto Porter. I'm very sorry about that. But along with that casualties of the deal. But so far, what are you seeing from Wendell Carter Jr.? Because that's going to really be the biggest takeaway for the Magic with that deal.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I've seen. I think he's projecting to be a guy that could be an elite defender. That seems to be the strength of what he brings to a basketball team. You see some of that finesse offensively. It was something I fell in love with him at Duke for that reason. I think he's got some old school skills in him. And right now, it looks like he's a more polished big than Mo Bamba. And so that's the story that we're following right now, is that Wendell Carter was basically brought in to battle it out, duke it out. Who's going to be the center or the 5 of this team moving forward? They drafted Mo Bamba to be that guy. He just hasn't really developed the way that they hope, whether that's a heart issue, and I mean that from like a motivation standpoint, or he just isn't developing the skill that they would have hoped. Either way, Wendell Carter's further ahead than where Mo is right now, and I think that was evident last year. And instantly when he came into the team, you kind of saw that impact. He had a couple of really good games with the Magic, and I had a chance to talk to him today about that trade, and I asked him how jarring that was. You spend a couple months at Duke, and then you're in the NBA. I don't think there's a lot of time to process just how strange it is to get yourself set up in a city. He fell in love with Chicago, loves the city of Chicago, and he said it was tough to deal with. It's something that it took him a minute to kind of get used to the fact that, now I'm in Orlando, and this is a business, and he's going to try and make the most of it. Seems like a really humble guy, and I see bright things ahead for Wendell Carter. Loved him out of college, and it seems like he's putting it together slowly but surely in the NBA.
Yeah, one thing I noticed, he definitely seemed that there was a little bit of saltiness there after the deal. He was on Instagram, and he kind of blotted out the Bulls logo in some images and stuff like that. So did you detect what would you say is like the emotion that you detected from him in regards to Chicago? I
think he was hurt. I think he fell in love with the city and saw himself a top draft pick as a guy that was going to be a cornerstone for the Bulls turnaround. And I don't think he ever thought that anything would deviate from that. When you, think about it. These are young kids, huge egos, that up until that point, no one's trading you. I mean, so many people, we don't deal with that. If you get traded to another city, it's a jarring thing to happen. I think sometimes we forget about the human element of it. And he was somebody that loved the city, loved the team, and sees bright things in himself. And so to have a team say, yeah, we don't really need you right now, I think was something that initially was hard for him to deal with. It seems like he's coping with it, and just knowing that, whether it's dollars and cents, contractually, there's so many things that go into trades. It seems like he's kind of talked himself into, okay, this is okay. But when I said, was it jarring? He kind of the eyes got wide, yeah, it absolutely was.
Yeah, I understand. And I think what you just said is very key. A lot of people don't understand that, this isn't NBA 2K. You're not just moving, avatars around. These are actual human beings who have, sometimes, guys have girlfriends and friends and friendships that they set up in the city. And now this trade doesn't just mean I got to wear a different uniform and learn a different offense. You know, I was used to talking to these people every day, 3 days a week, and they could come by the house or I could go by their house, and this just changed everything, Yeah. So it's more to it than just basketball here in a lot of instances. So, and it's a feeling of rejection. Like you said, it's like, we thought we wanted you, but we changed our mind. We want this other guy more. Literally. That's essentially what it is.
Yeah. I think there's a bit of feeling disposable.
Yeah.
When you feel like you're that guy, I mean, you could look at it two different ways. The Magic just wanted you so bad.
Yeah.
Or the Bulls wanted to discard you. I guess it's just in the way that it lands for you. But if you're not expecting it and you haven't mentally prepared yourself for that possibility, then that would be pretty shocking. I would be stunned. Like if my phone rang right now and it was my boss and they said, hey, we're trading you to Phoenix. You're going to be a sports talk host over in Arizona. I mean, it would take me a minute.
Yeah,
figure that out.
Yeah, there's some guy from Arizona we just feel would be a better fit to talk to Floridians.
Exactly. Your contract doesn't work quite as good as his does.
Yeah, I get it, man. I get it. So that's an insane thing. So I know you talked to Jalen Suggs today, and you mentioned we were talking before we came on about Jonathan Isaac. Obviously, there's a lot of conversation going on around him about vaccinations, and I was talking to Sean Deveney earlier in the show, and how the NBA would prefer, obviously, if the conversation wasn't shifted towards COVID and vaccinations, but unfortunately it's 2021, and that's some of the things that we have to talk about. What was the sense you got? And I know you didn't get a lot of contact with Jonathan Isaac today, but what was the sense you got from him, his level of comfort, just the vibe overall?
I mean, Jonathan Isaac, you say what you will about him. He is very confident and firm in his beliefs, and he took to the podium. He spoke in more of a scrum setting than with individuals. Like, you kind of, it's like a merry-go-round of players that come around in the practice court. I think because they knew how that conversation was going to go with everybody, rather than everybody asking Jonathan Isaac the same questions. He just addressed the media as a whole, and he backed up his point. He said that he was misquoted in the Rolling Stone article. They were approached by a writer, the team was, so that they could talk to Jonathan Isaac, because the writer there, whose name escapes me right now, wanted to talk to a number of NBA players that were choosing not to get vaccinated, guys like Isaac, guys like Kyrie Irving, to get a better understanding, and kind of approached it in a way of objectivity, that he was going to cover this story just to better understand it, and instead took it and decided to make it sort of a lean. And Jonathan Isaac claims that he was misrepresented, misquoted, and saying that he chose not to get the vaccine because of Donald Trump press conferences that he watched and studying Black history. And he said that he never said those things, and that his reasons were simply because he felt like he didn't need them. He didn't need the vaccine. He cited religious reasons. Whether or not you want to draw a correlation there, I'll leave that up to you. I'm at this point now personally where I've been covering this COVID story. I mean, I remember stepping into the studio on March 12th, 2020, when it was actually the Chicago Bulls and Orlando Magic that were supposed to play that day at the Amway Center. We huddled up for a press conference, which hindsight, that was stupid at the time to do that at that time of what was going on. But we didn't know anything on March 12th of 2020, other than games were being shut down. Since then, we've been covering it just like crazy. Every single day, there's something new and a different angle, and we're all trying to play epidemiologist in sports talk radio. Brian, this is not why I got into the business, and I'm trying to run as far away as I can from this type of conversation, not because I'm afraid to talk about it. I'm not. I'm just over it. And when it comes to the vaccine, if you want to get it, get it. If you don't. If the NBA is not going to mandate it for players, then it's not mandated. And that means that players have options. Jonathan Isaac is using his, and I don't know why so many people feel like they are owed this explanation that has to make sense. If he doesn't have to get it, then his explanation doesn't have to make sense. And that's not a personal opinion on whether or not he probably should get it. But if he doesn't want to, then that's up to him. The vitriol that I've seen is really disappointing. Jonathan Isaac, you can disagree with this. Dude, he's a great guy.
Mm-hmm.
He does so much in the community. He's faith-based. He's a good human being. He's the kind of person that you'd want to be around. And so it's just one of those things we divide all the time. And to see the division around such a good human being, it's just kind of disappointing and depressing.
And it's also just a second that we're talking about a kid. Like, and I know he's technically an adult, but all of us who have been an adult for longer than like 6 months still consider him a kid, and he's not, and I'm not, like you said, I'm not saying you should or you should not be vaccinated. I think he should be vaccinated. But at the same time, I also recognize that where we are right now in society, if you don't agree with whatever is the thing that everyone's saying that you should agree with, nobody wants to hear why you didn't or why you don't. They just want to throw you under a bus and group you in with everybody else who does or does not agree with whatever the thing is. And that's unfortunate that it's not more conversation around a lot of the stuff, but that's where we are. That's how things are. I hope that, there's a resolution to that whole thing with Jonathan Isaac and every other player that falls into that category, because it would be a lot more fun to just talk about basketball.
And I hope that's what we can do. And that is one of the reasons, selfishly, that I want him and everybody to get vaccinated. Once you're at 100%, then based on league protocols, we don't need to talk about this stuff. Yeah. And but that's me. That's my selfish reasons.
Yeah.
I do think one of the things that I find sort of puzzling is that the NBA has mandated that its employees get vaccinated, but the players don't have to. It creates this sort of double standard that I think it creates more of that division. When you're saying that the person in ticket sales has to have it, but the backup power forward doesn't.
Yeah.
What kind of message does that send to your employees? That's not to say that person is more valuable than the power forward on the team. They're not. And the players are a huge part. They're the biggest part of the league, and you've got to keep them happy. But it's this dangerous road that they've gone down with anything that resembles the word mandate, and it's the thing that people end up yelling about the most. And that's why I go back to, if you're not going to mandate, then don't get upset when somebody tells you they're not going to get it, because that's what's going to happen. You leave the door open for it.
Absolutely. I understand and totally see where you're coming from, Brandon. Well, I do appreciate you taking your time to speak to us today. It was definitely enlightening. It's something that, hopefully we can get a chance to do this again. And as you know, anytime you need some opinions and expertise in the gaming world, I am always down. I'm telling you right now, Brandon, MLB The Show is taking over my life.
Okay, good, because we're going to need to talk about that on my show soon. I've deleted any other gaming contact out of my phone completely. It's just you, Brian.
It's right, and that's the right thing to do.
I need an update on Madden 22 also. I haven't played yet, so we can touch on that soon.
Yeah, it's some rough days right now. It's it's feeling
they haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah, it's feeling very Mac Jones in week 4 against the Bucs-ish.
Not good. 10 points max.
Yeah, 10 points max. So, like I said, I appreciate it, Brandon. Thanks a lot, man. You have a good one.
My pleasure.
All right, first we got to talk about Ben Simmons. And I understand what their brass is trying to do, from Doc Rivers, Daryl Morey, Joel Embiid, the entire 76ers roster, to be quite honest, are trying to kind of backpedal, and they're trying to recoup whatever it is that they damaged with the way the Ben Simmons situation was handled at the end of their playoff run this past season. They want Ben Simmons back into the fold. It looks to me he has made up his mind. He is ready to move on from the 76ers. Now, from a pure talent standpoint, do I understand why they're trying to kind of get this back together? Totally understand. I mean, you have a 6'10" guard who's able to effectively play 4 positions. He is an all-world defender, a fantastic passer, solid finisher around the basket when he'll take the shot, but he has these issues with shooting free throws as well as not taking 3-pointers. Totally get it. We all know the story. It's understandable why you would want to work that out, considering you have Tobias Harris, Joel Embiid, and what you have on that team. But let's just be honest. It is time to move on. Things there have been so irreparably damaged that I think all parties would be better off if they just simply moved on. I'm just saying, but the best trade available, if the 76ers will ever get to the point where they just realize that this is over and they're holding their team and their franchise back by not moving on, the best trade they can make is with the Sacramento Kings. Now, I had this conversation with someone else before, and they made this point as well, or they made this point initially, and I've warmed up to the idea even more. Sending Ben Simmons to the Sacramento Kings in exchange for De'Aaron Fox, you have to have a throw in just to kind of make the money match. Maybe you say a Damian Jones, and you give the Philadelphia 76ers a 2022 first round pick and a 2024 first round pick. And you make that trade and you put Ben Simmons on Sacramento with Tyrese Halliburton, with everything that they're building there, and you pull De'Aaron Fox and put him with the 76ers. Now, I know Philly's trying hard to keep Ben, but in the long run, a guard like De'Aaron Fox, who's not a perfect player by any stretch, he still fits what the 76ers are trying to do even more. They won't have to worry about the aggression on offense. He's not the playmaker necessarily, or not the playmaker at all that Ben Simmons is from a facilitating standpoint, but he has consistently raised his scoring average each of the 4 years he's been in the league. He's at 25 points per game last year. He's not going to be a double-digit assist guy, but he's a 6 to 7 assists per game kind of guy. He also is not a fantastic three-point shooter, but the key point of this is, while he only shot like 32% from three last year, the key point is he will take the shot, and his reluctance to take the shot will not hurt your overall offense. And while he's not on Ben Simmons' level as an overall versatile defender, he's not a complete slouch on that end. He's shown the ability, even going back to his years in college, that he can challenge on that year with being a disruptive player in the passing lanes and just totally buying in on the defensive end under Doc Rivers. So that's the best trade for Philly to make. It's just a matter of when will they realize and when will they accept that we can't salvage this. This Ben Simmons situation is broken, and that's the way to move on. All right, let's talk about the Chicago Bears and the absolute disaster that we saw take place on Sunday in Justin Fields' first start against the Cleveland Browns. Now, I hear everybody saying they're just going after Nagy, fire Nagy, fire Nagy. And I'm going to tell you the honest God truth. I believe they have to fire Nagy as well. And I think they should fire Nagy sooner rather than later. But I don't believe they need to fire Nagy for the exact same reasons that some of the other people are saying. I heard Dan Orlovsky on ESPN literally say that this is either an example of incompetence, or it is an example of someone doing something on purpose. Like literally, he's setting Justin Fields up to fail. I understand the emotion of the situation and how someone can feel that. Obviously, I was born and raised in Chicago, grew up a Bears fan. I get it, right? But I always like to ask myself, what would be the point of that from Matt Nagy's standpoint? Why would he literally want this young man to fail? He doesn't stand to gain anything by this. Matt Nagy's still a very young coach. He can get another opportunity to be a head coach even if this one's over. He's going to want obviously another job more than likely in football after this. That would be a pretty nasty thing to have on a resume. So I don't see how that helps him. So I don't think he needs to be fired for something like that. But what I think he needs to be let go for is because the ship has sailed with that coach and this group of players, with that coach and this city. Not everything that Matt Nagy has done during his time in Chicago has been a failure, but enough of it has been, in conjunction with Ryan Pace, the general manager, that it is literally just time to move on. Now, Ryan Pace is not going to fire himself. He does need to let go of Matt Nagy. I don't know if they're looking at this as some sort of package deal, both in at the same time, both have to leave at the same time. I'm not sure if Ryan Pace is on that, and he needs to absolutely go at the same time. But assuming that's not the case, the right move for the Bears right now, because you got to think about Justin Fields and his future. The right move right now is to turn to Bill Lazor, the offensive coordinator, and say, hey, Bill, we're going to let Matt go. Bill's already dropped some comments earlier this year that would suggest he's kind of thrown Nagy under the bus a bit. But I would approach Bill Lazor and say, hey, man, we're not going to offer you the permanent head coaching job right now. We offer you this as an interim. You'll obviously be the play caller. The Bears had some success late in the season last year when Bill Lazor was the play caller before Matt Nagy took the responsibilities back over from Bill Lazor. So the benefit in doing this is that you're not introducing an entirely new system to Justin Fields in the middle of a season, which that wouldn't be done anyway. There's not going to be any head coach that could come in and implement an entire new system. It just won't happen. But you keep some level of cohesion going with Justin Fields, who is the most important player in your franchise at this point. You got to make sure that he's still taken care of. But I can no longer subject him to either the stubbornness or the incompetence that we've seen from Matt Nagy. To me, those are the two things. Those are the two qualities, so to speak, that we're seeing from Nagy. He's either too stubborn to make a change, or he's literally too incompetent to see that what you're doing isn't working. And I lean more towards the stubbornness aspect, because many of these coaches, they're geniuses in one right, and because they know their art so well, they know their discipline so well, they refuse to take these suggestions from what would be considered laymen, fans and the like, and certain members of the media, myself included. Not going to take those suggestions. I've been in football for 20 years. I've been in football for 30 years. What are you going to tell me? Well, oftentimes they get just a little bit too smart for their own good. We even saw this on the other side of the field. Kevin Stefanski on Sunday goes for it twice on fourth down. Now, maybe just because he just knew that the Bears offense wasn't going to be able to do anything at all, but he goes for it twice on fourth down. The second time they go for it on fourth down, you got Nick Chubb and a pretty dominant offensive line. 4th and 1, they try to run some trickery, mixed direction play, bootlegging Baker Mayfield out wide. The Bears are getting great pressure throughout most of the first half, and it ends up being a disaster. So it's not Matt Nagy is the only coach that's overthinking things. Pete Carroll in the Super Bowl, instead of just handing the ball to Marshawn Lynch. This kind of thing happens. So I don't think there's a situation where there's a devious thing happening or this malice involved. It's a lot of times it's just pure stubbornness. Nagy had a plan. I'm going to start with Andy Dalton. If we get to a certain place, I'm going to go to Justin Fields. That plan has not taken its course, and I think that Nagy is literally suffering from having to break away from what he originally wanted to do, and he certainly doesn't want to do anything simply because the fans and the media are pushing him to it. I think it's more about being stubborn than wanting Justin Fields to fail. All right, let's talk about the New York Giants. They have a tough situation coming up here in week 4 as they have to go and play the New Orleans Saints on the road. I got a chance to watch the Saints firsthand against the New England Patriots in week 3, and this defense is one of the more underrated defenses in the league. They got to Mac Jones with regularity, 11 hits on the quarterback, and we're not talking about a poor offensive line. Now, sure, there's some issues at right tackle for the Patriots with Trent Brown being out, and many people have never been in love with Isaiah Wynn as at left tackle. So we're not talking about necessarily a perfect offensive line, but before the season started, the Patriots would have been considered one of the top offensive lines in the league, especially from a run game standpoint, but in pass protection, not slouches either. The Saints, with Cameron Jordan and the like, got in the backfield with regularity. Mac Jones was under duress most of this game, right? Now, we're comparing Joneses here, right? So we've done Mac Jones and Daniel Jones. I know Mac Jones's career is only 3 games long at this point, but from what I've seen of him and watching Daniel Jones throughout his entire career, we're talking about who protects the ball and takes care of the football. Mac Jones has shown much more of a tendency of taking care of the football than Daniel Jones has over obviously a much larger sample size. Against this defense, I'm going to tell you guys right now, if you are Giants fans, I would be terrified at this upcoming week. And obviously, if I'm Joe Judge and I'm Giants offensive, the entire offensive coordinator, everybody on that side of the ball has to be harping to Daniel Jones to take care of this football this week, because this Saints defense hawks. They had 3 interceptions against Mac Jones on Sunday. They get pressure on the quarterback. If the Giants are not able to establish a run game and Daniel Jones has to put the ball up 30 or more times, it's going to be a really long week. And what's already been a tough season for the Giants is going to get even tougher. Keep your eyes on this situation. Daniel Jones has got to play better than he has been playing, and he's got to take better care of the football than he has been as well. All right, lastly, let's talk about the rookie quarterbacks, and specifically, we're going to talk about the New York Jets, Zach Wilson, man. And I don't want to be harsh, but I got to be blunt. I got to be honest. In watching all five of, and granted, we've seen not a lot of Trey Lance, but in watching the 5 rookie quarterbacks, Zach Wilson by far is the most worrisome from a did a team waste their first round pick on a quarterback standpoint. I mean, 2 touchdown passes, 7 interceptions. And I'm going to tell you the biggest thing about Zach Wilson, the most worrisome thing about him early on. And I know it's only been 3 games, but the fact that he literally does not like to take the easy passes. Like, if you look back, take a look at if you get an opportunity that is available in NFL.com, if you take a look at the all 22 tape, I always like to see, before I ever judge an interception, before I ever judge an underthrow, an overthrow, or even especially a coverage sack or a sack at any point, before I judge any of that, I always like to see the all 22 because I want to see, what did the quarterback see? Why did he hold it so long? Why did he choose this receiver? Why did he do whatever it is that he did? And when you look at the all 22 on Zach Wilson, oftentimes there is a check down. There is just a safer pass, and extend the drive, control the football, sort of a pass to make. And he literally tends to go for the more difficult pass all the time. And what I'm looking at is he seemed to get away with that a bit at BYU. And not only did he get away with it, he was praised for it. And people said things like he has moxie and he has all of this fire and all of this different sort of thing. But I'm just worried that tendency is something that won't be broken with more experience. Like, literally, there's a flawed quarterback here. You know, he's starting to remind me of, and Bears fans will be able to attest to this, he's starting to remind me a lot of Rex Grossman, right? So that year that the Bears went to the Super Bowl 2006, you know, fantastic defense. Devin Hester is insane as a return man. Rex Grossman was the starting quarterback. And there was a concept that was good Rex, bad Rex. When the Bears won, there was good Rex. When they lost, we generally lost because of bad Rex. I'm having the feeling that if the Jets are ever able to put a really solid defense around this guy and a decent running game as well, their wins and losses may come down to good Zach or bad Zach. Because he has obviously all of this arm talent, much like Rex Grossman had. If people don't understand, Rex Grossman had a cannon of an arm. Even physically, these guys are somewhat similar. So I heard a lot of these other comparisons. I even heard somebody say Brett Favre and all of this other stuff. I'm worried that it's more Rex Grossman than Brett Favre. Just take a look. Like I said, 2 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, pales in comparison to what we've seen from the other quarterbacks. Mac Jones had 3 interceptions in week 3, but if you saw the game, you saw the picks, you know that at least 2 of them weren't his fault. So, you know, he's played well. Trey Lance hasn't gotten a lot of time. Justin Fields was probably unintentionally sabotaged in week 3 by a horrible game plan. And even he took better care of the football than Zach Wilson. So I'm worried about Zach Wilson, and I think Jets fans should be too.